The nearly dead Apache woman offered her body, but the rancher did the unexpected. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long, golden shadows over the rugged desert landscape. The wind whispered softly through the sparse brush, carrying with it the dry, sharp scent of sand and earth baked under the relentless heat. Amid this harsh wilderness, a lone figure struggled along a narrow, dusty path. She was an Apache woman, young but already marked by hardship. Her clothes were torn, and her feet were raw from walking barefoot over rocks and thorny plants. Every step seemed to take more from her than she could give, and her body, battered and exhausted, leaned on a walking stick for support. For days, she had been traveling alone. Her tribe had been attacked, scattered by a violent raid from rival groups. She had witnessed friends and family fall, their cries echoing in her memory, and she had fled with only the clothes on her back and a small pouch of dried corn. Hunger gnawed at her belly, thirst parched her throat, and the sun's unyielding glare burned her skin. Her vision blurred, and her head spun with the effort of moving forward. Each moment felt like a battle against her own body, yet she pressed on, driven by the faint hope of finding shelter, water, or help. In the distance, she noticed a faint plume of smoke rising above the horizon. Her heart leapt. Perhaps there was a settlement, a homestead, a chance to survive. The thought pushed her forward, though her legs ached, and her breathing came in shallow, uneven gasps. As she drew closer, the landscape changed. The flat, open desert gave way to a small valley where a solitary ranch stood. The buildings were sturdy and worn, surrounded by wooden fences that held a few grazing animals. A horse pawed at the ground near the corral, its eyes alert. The rancher's land seemed like an oasis in the unforgiving desert, a place where survival might be possible. From the porch of the main house, a man watched her approach. He was a rancher in his 50s, his face weathered by years under the sun and wind, his hands rough and calloused from endless work. His eyes, sharp and observant, followed the woman carefully. Outsiders were rare in these parts, and his instincts told him to be cautious. The desert could be cruel, and not everyone who wandered into his territory did so with good intentions. Yet there was something about her gait, the weakness in her step, and the way she clutched her side that stirred a pang of concern in him. She did not move like a threat, she moved like someone barely clinging to life. The woman noticed him watching. For a brief moment, her eyes widened with fear, but hunger and desperation outweighed caution. She made her way to the edge of the ranch, her voice trembling as she called out. Her words were halting, but her meaning was clear. She needed help, any help to survive. She tried to explain the dangers she had faced and the injuries she carried, but her exhaustion made speech difficult. The rancher stepped closer to the fence, keeping a safe distance, yet offering a gesture of openness by simply listening. As she sank to her knees on the dry earth, her body finally giving out, she felt a strange mix of despair and relief. She had crossed the line from fear to vulnerability, and in that moment, she offered something that reflected her desperation and the severity of her situation. In her own words, she suggested that she had nothing left to give but herself. It was a plea born not of intention to deceive or harm, but of sheer survival instinct, a human response when all other options seemed lost. The rancher's face betrayed no emotion, but inside, a conflict raged. He had seen suffering before, but this was raw, immediate, and painfully human. He knew the desert could kill in hours if one was unprepared. The woman's offer shocked him, not because of its audacity, but because it was a mirror of the extreme measures people sometimes resorted to when faced with death. He had a choice: turn her away, potentially condemning her to the unforgiving land, or act on the stirrings of his conscience. Time seemed to stretch as they regarded one another. The woman, her breathing shallow, her body trembling, waited for a response that could mean life or death. The rancher, meanwhile, weighed his options with a careful, steady mind. He saw the sun beginning its descent, the shadows stretching across the valley floor, and realized that the coming night would bring even harsher conditions. There was no time for hesitation. Survival was immediate, and kindness, if offered, needed to be decisive. Without a word, he moved toward the porch, gesturing for her to follow. She hesitated, uncertainty clouding her eyes, but the promise of water and shelter was too strong to resist. Each step toward him was a step back from the edge of death. Her knees scraped against the rough ground, but she pushed herself forward, guided by hope. The rancher kept a steady pace, allowing her to lean on his arm when she faltered, a simple act of human care that spoke volumes. Inside the house, the air was cooler, shaded from the harsh glare of the sun. The rancher led her to a chair and offered a bowl of water. She drank slowly, almost in disbelief, the liquid soothing her parched throat and revitalizing her flagging strength. The rancher observed quietly, understanding that in these moments, patience and respect were more powerful than words. He moved to fetch a blanket, covering her shoulders and providing warmth against the sudden chill that crept through her exhausted body. For the first time in days, the woman allowed herself a small measure of comfort. She felt the kindness of another human being, something she had not experienced since the chaos of the raid. Her mind, clouded by pain and fatigue, began to clear, and she realized that this man, this rancher, had not judged her or taken advantage of her desperation. Instead, he had responded with simple, practical compassion. The realization filled her with a mix of relief, gratitude, and a cautious optimism she had not thought possible. The rancher, in turn, considered the extraordinary circumstances that had brought this woman to his doorstep. He reflected on his life, the solitude of the ranch, and the harshness of the land he called home. Moments like this reminded him that life was unpredictable and fragile. People appeared and disappeared in the desert, sometimes leaving a mark, sometimes gone before one could remember their name. Yet here she was, a living testament to resilience, courage, and the will to survive. Hours passed as the woman rested and regained some of her strength. The rancher prepared a simple meal, offering her food in small portions to ensure her weakened body could handle it. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, feeling nourishment return not just to her body but also to her spirit. The house was quiet except for the occasional creak of wood and the soft murmur of wind outside. In that quiet, a fragile bond began to form, one built on mutual recognition of hardship and the simple humanity that had brought them together. By evening, the desert sky blazed with color, streaked with oranges and purples as the sun dipped below the horizon. The temperature dropped, and the rancher showed her to a small, simple room where she could sleep safely. The woman, for the first time in many days, allowed herself to close her eyes without fear, the exhaustion pulling her into a deep, much-needed rest. Outside, the wind whispered through the valley, carrying with it the promise of another day, another chance at survival. In that moment, the first part of her journey ended, not with the despair she had feared, but with a tentative hope. She had crossed the threshold from death to life, from fear to cautious trust. The rancher had done something unexpected, responding to her desperation not with judgment or exploitation, but with the most basic human kindness. It was a beginning, a fragile yet undeniable first step towards survival, dignity, and perhaps a future neither of them could have predicted. And so, as the night settled over the desert, the nearly dead Apache woman slept safely, and the rancher, who had once been a solitary figure in a harsh land, found himself quietly changed by the encounter. The harsh desert outside remained indifferent, but inside, a spark of humanity had taken root, a spark that would guide the next steps of a story neither of them could yet fully imagine. The morning sun broke gently over the horizon, casting a soft golden light across the ranch. The desert, though still harsh, seemed calmer in this quiet hour, as if the world itself was taking a deep breath. Inside the modest ranch house, the Apache woman stirred from her rest. Her body, though still weak, felt the subtle strength returning after the nourishment and care she had received the night before. She sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes and feeling the smooth texture of the blanket that covered her. For the first time in many days, she felt a measure of safety and warmth, though uncertainty still lingered like a shadow at the edges of her mind. The rancher had been awake for some time, already tending to the small tasks that began each day on the homestead. He noticed her movement from across the room but made no immediate gesture. Instead, he went about his chores, chopping wood and filling water buckets, giving her space. The woman observed him quietly, studying his movements. There was a rhythm to his work, a sense of calm efficiency that contrasted sharply with the chaos and violence she had fled. His presence was solid and steady, a grounding force she had not expected to find in the desert's isolation. Eventually, the rancher paused and approached her with a small bowl of porridge, warm and fragrant. She accepted it with a nod, eating slowly, careful not to overburden her fragile stomach. The taste was simple but nourishing, each spoonful a reminder that survival was not just about escaping danger, but also about regaining the small comforts that made life bearable. As she ate, the rancher watched quietly, noting the cautious gratitude in her eyes. There was an unspoken understanding between them. He would not force questions or demand explanations, but he would offer the care she so desperately needed. After finishing the meal, the woman spoke, her voice still weak but growing steadier with each word. She began to recount her story, explaining how her tribe had been attacked and scattered. She told of the dangers she had faced, the nights spent hiding in the open desert, and the hunger and thirst that had threatened to claim her life. Her words were fragmented, colored by exhaustion and the trauma of her experiences, yet there was clarity in her intention. She wanted him to understand, to see that her desperation had not been born of choice, but of necessity. The rancher listened with a quiet patience that surprised her. In the towns and settlements she had passed, people often reacted with suspicion, fear, or judgment. Here, however, she found only attentive ears and a calm presence. He asked no questions that felt invasive, instead offering small, gentle prompts that encouraged her to speak. With each sentence, she felt her burden lighten slightly, the act of speaking her pain giving her a measure of relief. The rancher's attention was steady, unyielding but kind, a combination she had never expected to encounter in the wide, lonely desert. As the morning unfolded, the rancher made another offer, though he phrased it carefully. He provided her with water, more food, and clean clothes to replace the tattered garments she had worn for days. He spoke of the dangers that remained in the wilderness and the need to regain strength before attempting to travel further. The woman, though hesitant at first, accepted his help. Each action, each gesture, reinforced a fragile trust that had begun the night before. She realized that this man's kindness was not conditional or fleeting, it was genuine, and it gave her hope that survival might yet be possible. Over the next few hours, the rancher continued with his routine, and the woman observed, learning without asking. She watched how he fed the animals, repaired fences, and moved with purpose across the ranch. There was dignity in his work, a sense of pride in the life he had built despite the harshness of the land. Her admiration grew quietly, and she began to see him not merely as a savior or protector, but as a human being shaped by his environment, disciplined by experience, and guided by a moral compass she had not anticipated encountering. As the day progressed, the woman felt the need to express her gratitude. She wanted to offer something in return, though she had nothing of value to give. The thought that had once seemed a desperate plea, her body as payment, emerged again in her mind. Her shame and fear clashed with her natural instinct for survival, leaving her torn. She approached the rancher cautiously, words trembling on her lips. Yet before she could speak, he interrupted gently. "You've survived this far on your courage," he said, his voice firm yet kind. "You don't owe me anything, just rest and take care of yourself. That's enough." Her eyes widened, disbelief and relief mingling. She had expected judgment, suspicion, or even rejection, but not this unreserved acceptance. The simple affirmation of her worth, without conditions or expectations, struck her deeply. It was a lesson she had not anticipated. Survival was not always a matter of what one could give, but sometimes of what one could receive with humility and grace. For the first time, she allowed herself to breathe fully, to release the tension that had coiled in her muscles since the attacks on her tribe. The afternoon brought new challenges, though none were physical. The woman began to share memories of her family, her people, and the traditions that had shaped her life. She spoke of the elders' teachings, the songs and stories that had guided her childhood, and the bonds that had been severed by violence. Each recollection was tinged with sorrow, yet there was pride as well, a recognition of resilience, community, and heritage. The rancher listened, absorbing each detail not as a distant observer but as a witness to the depth of her humanity. His presence offered a safe space for these stories to unfold, allowing grief to be expressed without fear of dismissal or ridicule. As evening approached, the woman's energy waned again, and she sought a quiet place to rest. The rancher, anticipating her need, prepared a small corner with blankets and pillows near the fireplace. The warmth of the fire, the gentle crackle of burning wood, and the steady presence of another human being offered a comfort she had not known in weeks. She lay down, her body grateful for respite, while her mind wandered over the day's events. The simple acts of care, the food, the water, the listening, had created a safe environment that felt almost miraculous in contrast to the chaos she had fled. In that quiet space, she began to reflect on the unexpected nature of kindness. In the desert, people often acted out of self-interest, fear, or necessity. Yet here, she had found something different: generosity without expectation, protection without condition. The realization left her both humbled and inspired. She wondered if such kindness existed beyond this ranch, in other remote places, or if this encounter was a rare exception in a harsh world. Either way, she knew that the memory of this day would remain with her, shaping her understanding of human nature and survival. Night fell fully over the ranch, and the desert cooled beneath a sky full of stars. The woman drifted into a fitful sleep, the rancher sitting nearby, tending to chores quietly and keeping watch. Outside, the animals settled, the wind softened, and the world seemed to pause in a rare moment of stillness. In this calm, both the rancher and the woman found a measure of peace. She had crossed the boundary from desperation to cautious hope, and he had acted in a way that affirmed his own values: integrity, compassion, and respect for life. The following day promised new challenges. She would need to regain strength, learn how to navigate the land safely, and determine her next steps. Yet the foundation had been laid, a relationship built on trust, mutual respect, and the shared acknowledgement of human vulnerability and resilience. The rancher's actions had shown her that survival was not merely a matter of enduring danger, but also of embracing the unexpected kindness of others. By evening, the woman felt noticeably stronger. She moved with more confidence, her steps steadier and her mind clearer. The rancher, observing her progress, allowed her small responsibilities around the ranch, showing her how to fetch water, feed animals, and tend to minor chores. Each task completed successfully bolstered her confidence and reinforced her sense of independence. She began to see that survival could coexist with dignity, that she could reclaim agency over her life even after enduring profound hardship. As the sun set, painting the desert in shades of pink and orange, the woman sat quietly on the porch, reflecting on the past 2 days. The journey from near death to cautious hope had been swift but transformative. She understood now that the choice she had made in desperation, to offer what she had to survive, was not necessary. The rancher's unexpected compassion had provided her not only with life, but also with the dignity she had feared was lost forever. In this shared silence, both of them recognized the beginnings of a bond, one not built on obligation, but on the recognition of human resilience and moral integrity. The woman knew her journey was far from over, and the desert still held dangers she could not yet foresee. Yet she also knew she had discovered something invaluable, that even in the harshest conditions, humanity could emerge in acts of quiet, steady care, and that such acts could change the course of a life forever. And so, as night fully settled over the desert, the Apache woman rested, stronger in body and spirit, while the rancher remained vigilant, quietly proud of the life he had saved and the unexpected connection that had formed between them. The day had begun with uncertainty and fear, yet it ended with hope, trust, and the understanding that survival sometimes depended as much on the kindness of others as on one's own courage. The days that followed brought a slow but steady rhythm to the Apache woman's recovery. The desert, which had once seemed an endless expanse of danger and isolation, now appeared less threatening, softened by the quiet life of the ranch. The rancher continued his work with steadfast discipline, and the woman watched closely, learning the ways of survival and care in this harsh land. She was still weak from her ordeal, but her body began to regain strength, and with it, a sense of cautious hope that had been absent since the day she fled her tribe. Each morning, the rancher would rise early, as he had done for years, and carry out his chores. He tended to the animals first, feeding the horses, checking the fences, and ensuring that the water troughs were filled. The woman, eager to prove her usefulness and to reclaim some measure of dignity, began assisting him. At first, her movements were clumsy, her body slow to respond after weeks of deprivation. Yet the rancher did not scold or rush her. He guided her with patience, demonstrating how to handle tools, carry water, and move carefully around the animals. The woman absorbed each lesson attentively, her respect for the rancher growing with every passing day. As her strength returned, the woman also began to talk more freely. She shared stories of her childhood among her tribe, the long days spent learning traditional crafts, the songs and dances that marked the seasons, and the elders who had taught her the ways of the land. Her voice, once hesitant and trembling, grew steadier with each recollection. The rancher listened, often silently, but sometimes he would nod or offer a thoughtful word, showing that he valued her stories. Through these conversations, the woman began to feel more like a person again, rather than a survivor clinging to life. One afternoon, as the sun climbed high and the desert heat pressed down, the woman asked the rancher about his own life. She wanted to understand the man who had saved her, to see him as more than just a provider of safety. The rancher, though initially reluctant, began to recount his story. He spoke of the early years when he had inherited the ranch from his father, the struggles of managing the land through droughts and harsh winters, and the loneliness that often accompanied a life spent in isolation. He shared his philosophy of life, hard work, integrity, and self-reliance, values that had guided him through countless hardships. The woman listened with fascination, realizing that, like her, he had faced challenges that had shaped him into the person he was. Their conversations gradually shifted from survival and hardship to small joys and simple pleasures. The woman described the beauty of the desert at dawn, the way the sunlight danced on the sand and rocks, and the quiet peace of the nights filled with stars. The rancher, in turn, shared stories of the animals he cared for, the cycles of planting and harvesting, and the satisfaction of seeing hard work bear fruit. These exchanges deepened their understanding of one another, bridging the gap between their worlds. Though they came from vastly different backgrounds, they recognized a shared humanity in each other, resilience, hope, and the capacity for kindness. As the days passed, the rancher encouraged the woman to regain independence in small ways. He taught her how to gather firewood safely, how to tend the garden, and how to prepare meals over the open hearth. Each task, though simple, carried a sense of accomplishment and restored confidence. The woman realized that survival was not just about escaping death, but about learning to live fully, even in a world that could be harsh and unforgiving. She began to feel a sense of agency, understanding that she could take care of herself while also contributing to the life of the ranch. Despite the progress, moments of doubt and fear still lingered. The woman would sometimes wake in the night, memories of the raid and the desert's dangers flooding back. On these nights, the rancher would leave a lantern burning outside her door, a small but steady assurance that she was not alone. She learned to face these fears gradually, drawing strength from the consistent care and protection he offered. Over time, the nights became less frightening, and she slept more soundly, her dreams slowly shifting from terror to the possibilities of a safer, more stable life. The bond between them grew stronger, built on trust, mutual respect, and shared understanding. The rancher, once a solitary figure defined by the harshness of his environment, began to see the woman not as a burden or a stranger, but as a resilient human being with her own thoughts, skills, and value. He admired her courage and determination, recognizing that surviving alone in the desert required not just physical strength, but an unwavering spirit. The woman, in turn, saw in him a rare combination of strength and compassion, a man capable of both protecting life and nurturing it. One day, while mending a section of fence near the edge of the ranch, the woman stumbled slightly and fell. The rancher caught her quickly, steadying her before she could be hurt. "Careful," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Your body has to learn to trust itself again." She nodded, realizing that she had grown stronger but still had limits. The fall reminded her that recovery was a process, one that required patience, persistence, and the support of others. She thanked him quietly, appreciating not just the physical safety he provided, but also the encouragement and guidance that helped her rebuild confidence in herself. The woman's gratitude manifested in small acts of care for the ranch. She swept the porch, fed the animals, and helped prepare meals. These gestures were her way of giving back, of expressing thanks without words. The rancher accepted them with quiet acknowledgement, understanding that gratitude was not always spoken aloud, but demonstrated through action. Their days became a rhythm of work, learning, and shared moments of quiet reflection. In this routine, both found a sense of stability that had been absent in their lives for years. As she grew stronger, the woman began to contemplate her next steps. She knew that eventually she would have to return to her people, to face the realities of her tribe and the aftermath of the raid. Yet the thought no longer filled her with panic. She felt equipped with the skills, knowledge, and resilience necessary to survive. The rancher, sensing her growing independence, encouraged her to trust herself. "You've come far," he said one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon. "Your journey isn't over, but you can face it with strength." His words were simple, yet they carried immense weight, reinforcing her sense of empowerment and readiness. In the evenings, they would sit together on the porch, watching the desert stretch out into the distance. The sky, painted with hues of pink, orange, and deepening blue, offered a quiet beauty that both could appreciate. The woman spoke of the stars and the traditions of her people, while the rancher reflected on the cycles of the land and the lessons learned from years of solitude. These moments, though calm, were filled with meaning, an acknowledgement of their shared journey, the hardships they had endured, and the trust that had grown between them. The woman began to see herself not as a victim of circumstance, but as a survivor with agency and dignity. She recognized that her journey was not defined solely by the attacks she had endured or the dangers of the desert, but also by the resilience, courage, and kindness that had carried her through. The rancher had played a crucial role, but the true strength lay within her, a combination of survival instinct, adaptability, and the willingness to trust when she had little reason to do so. By the end of the third week, the woman's recovery was well underway. She moved with confidence across the ranch, her body stronger and her mind clearer. She had mastered many of the daily tasks, and her presence had become a natural part of the ranch's rhythm. The rancher observed this progress with quiet satisfaction, recognizing that she had regained not just her physical health, but also a sense of self-worth and purpose. Their bond, strengthened through shared experiences, was no longer defined solely by need, but by mutual respect and recognition of each other's character. One afternoon, as they worked together to repair a section of the roof, the woman paused to catch her breath. She looked at the rancher, her expression thoughtful. "I never imagined someone could help me without expecting something in return," she said quietly. The rancher smiled faintly, nodding. "Kindness isn't always easy," he replied, "but it's worth giving when you can. And sometimes, it's the unexpected that teaches us the most." His words resonated deeply, reinforcing lessons she had learned not only about survival, but about human nature, trust, and the potential for goodness even in harsh circumstances. As the sun set and the desert cooled, the woman felt a sense of accomplishment and hope. She had endured immense challenges, learned new skills, and rebuilt both body and spirit. Yet more importantly, she had discovered the value of trust, respect, and the quiet power of human connection. The rancher, too, had been affected by the experience, seeing in her strength and courage a reflection of resilience he had sometimes overlooked in his own life. Together, they had navigated the delicate balance between dependence and independence, fear and trust, survival and humanity. That evening, as she lay down to rest, the woman reflected on her journey so far. The desert remained unforgiving beyond the safety of the ranch, but she no longer felt the same fear and despair that had once consumed her. She had learned that survival was not merely the absence of death, but the presence of resilience, courage, and the support of those who acted with integrity and compassion. The rancher's unexpected kindness had become a cornerstone of her recovery, a reminder that even in the harshest of environments, humanity could prevail. And so, as night settled over the desert, the Apache woman slept with a renewed sense of hope. She knew challenges still lay ahead, but she also understood that she was stronger, wiser, and more prepared to face them. The rancher, keeping watch from his quiet vigil, recognized that their journey together had transformed both their lives. What had begun as a desperate encounter had evolved into a story of resilience, trust, and the unexpected power of human compassion, a story that neither would forget. The days on the ranch passed in a gentle rhythm, a mixture of work, learning, and quiet reflection. The Apache woman had regained much of her strength, and she moved with a confidence that had once seemed impossible. Yet beneath the surface of this routine, a tension lingered, one that had been growing slowly in her mind. She remembered the moment she had first offered herself to the rancher in desperation. It had been a plea born of fear and exhaustion, a desperate attempt to secure her survival. Though he had responded with kindness and care, the memory of her initial offer still weighed heavily on her. One afternoon, as the sun hung high and cast long shadows across the yard, she approached the rancher while he repaired a fence. Her steps were steady now, but her voice carried a mixture of nervousness and resolve. I need to speak with you," she began, pausing to catch her breath. The rancher looked up, setting aside his tools. He sensed the seriousness in her tone and gestured for her to continue. She took a deep breath and spoke of her offer from the first night, the act born of desperation, and the shame she still felt. Her words were soft but urgent, a mixture of apology and explanation. The rancher listened without interruption. He did not react with surprise, anger, or judgment. Instead, he regarded her calmly, his eyes reflecting a quiet strength that had carried him through decades of hardship in the desert. He understood what she had experienced, the terror, the vulnerability, and the instinct to do whatever was necessary to survive. He also understood that her offer was not an expression of who she was, but a reflection of her desperate circumstances. In that moment, he saw clearly the resilience and dignity that lay beneath her fear. When she finished, expecting perhaps a harsh refusal or a lecture, the rancher said something entirely unexpected. "You don't owe me anything," he said firmly, his voice gentle but unwavering. "Your life, your strength, your courage, that is enough. You have nothing to apologize for, and you will not repay your survival with anything that compromises your dignity." The woman blinked, disbelief and relief mingling in her expression. She had expected judgment, suspicion, or even some condition attached to her rescue, but instead, she found compassion that transcended her fears. The woman's emotions overwhelmed her. Tears welled in her eyes, not from sadness, but from the profound relief of being seen and valued for who she truly was, rather than for what she could offer in desperation. The rancher, sensing her need for reassurance, continued. "Survival is not a debt," he said. "It's a gift. And kindness is never a transaction. You have every right to your life, your body, and your freedom." His words, simple yet powerful, resonated deeply within her. For the first time since the raid, she felt that she could breathe without fear of judgment or exploitation. In the following days, the woman reflected on this unexpected act of kindness. She realized that the rancher had offered her something far greater than shelter or food. He had restored her sense of self-worth and autonomy. She began to participate in ranch life with a renewed sense of purpose. Tasks that had once seemed daunting, carrying water, tending the animals, repairing fences, now became opportunities to demonstrate her strength and competence. Each small success reinforced her belief in her own capabilities and her sense of dignity, which had been nearly stripped away by the hardships she had endured. The rancher, for his part, treated her as an equal in the daily routines of the ranch. He offered guidance and instruction without condescension, praised her efforts when appropriate, and allowed her the space to learn at her own pace. The woman observed that this approach was different from anything she had experienced before. In her tribe, elders had taught with strict authority, and in the settlements she had passed through, outsiders had often treated her with suspicion or dismissal. Here, however, respect was paired with expectation, and guidance was coupled with trust. She began to feel a deep sense of belonging, even in a place that was not her home. One afternoon, as they worked side by side to repair a section of fencing damaged by a recent storm, the woman paused to reflect on the journey that had brought her here. The desert had once seemed a relentless adversary, a place where life and death balanced on a knife's edge. Now, it seemed less formidable, softened by the presence of the rancher and the lessons she had learned. She understood that her survival was no longer a solitary struggle, but part of a shared human experience. In the act of giving care, the rancher had taught her that strength could coexist with compassion, and survival could be achieved without sacrificing one's dignity. Their conversations began to explore deeper subjects as well. The woman asked about the rancher's experiences during his youth, the challenges he had faced in managing the land, and the lessons he had learned from hardship. He spoke openly, recounting stories of droughts, storms, and isolation, and the strategies he had developed to endure them. Through these stories, she began to see parallels between his life and her own, different circumstances, yet similar struggles and a shared capacity for resilience and courage. The discussions deepened their bond, creating a sense of mutual understanding and respect that transcended words. One evening, as the sky blazed with the colors of sunset, the woman asked the rancher why he had refused her initial offer. She wanted to understand the principle behind his unexpected decision, to grasp the logic or morality that had guided him. The rancher paused, considering his answer carefully. "Because life is not a commodity," he said finally. "Because dignity cannot be traded. And because true strength is shown not in taking advantage of another's desperation, but in supporting them through it. You are not here to repay me, and I am not here to repay you. We are here to help each other survive, and to do so with integrity." His words left an impression that would remain with her forever, shaping the way she viewed human relationships and the value of kindness in a harsh world. In the following days, the woman began to take on more responsibilities around the ranch, working independently and making decisions with increasing confidence. The rancher observed her quietly, recognizing the transformation that had occurred. She had shifted from a frightened, desperate survivor to a capable, independent individual with a clear sense of self-worth. Yet she still maintained humility, acknowledging the help she had received while embracing her own ability to contribute meaningfully. This balance of independence and gratitude was exactly what the rancher had hoped to cultivate. The unexpected kindness of the rancher also had practical consequences. The woman, no longer consumed by shame or fear, was able to learn new skills more effectively. She mastered the care of the animals, learned to navigate the land safely, and began to repair and maintain parts of the ranch with confidence. Each day of learning reinforced her sense of competence and resilience, further solidifying the trust and respect between them. She realized that survival was not only about physical endurance, but also about mental strength and the ability to adapt and grow in response to new circumstances. The woman's gratitude manifested in subtle ways. She would quietly tend to the animals without being asked, prepare meals with care, and anticipate the rancher's needs before he spoke. These small acts of consideration were her way of honoring the trust he had placed in her and the dignity he had preserved. The rancher acknowledged these gestures with quiet approval, understanding that true gratitude is shown through action rather than words. Together, they created a rhythm of work, learning and shared respect that transformed the ranch into a place of stability and growth for both of them. One evening, as the desert sky darkened and the stars emerged in brilliant clusters, the woman reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She thought of the raid, the days of wandering, the hunger and the fear. And she thought of the rancher, who had chosen to respond not with judgment or exploitation, but with kindness and integrity. That single decision had changed the course of her life, giving her not just survival but dignity, confidence, and hope for the future. She realized that the unexpected can often be the most powerful force in human life, transforming despair into possibility and fear into trust. As the night deepened, the woman lay in the small room the rancher had prepared for her. The flickering light of a lantern cast gentle shadows across the walls, and the quiet of the desert enveloped her in a sense of calm. She felt the strength returning to her body, the clarity returning to her mind, and the courage returning to her heart. She understood that her journey was far from over, but she also knew that she had acquired the tools, skills, and mindset necessary to face whatever lay ahead. The rancher's unexpected act of kindness had not only saved her life, but had also equipped her to embrace the challenges of survival with dignity and purpose. In the days that followed, the woman continued to grow in confidence and independence. She worked alongside the rancher, contributed to the ranch's upkeep, and even began to offer suggestions based on her own observations and experiences. The rancher welcomed her input, recognizing that she had valuable insights and that her perspective enriched the life of the ranch. Their partnership evolved into one of mutual respect and cooperation, a rare and meaningful connection born from adversity and sustained by integrity. The woman also began to envision her future beyond the ranch. She knew that she would eventually need to return to her people, to reconnect with her tribe and the community she had been forced to leave behind. Yet now, unlike before, She faced this prospect with strength, knowledge, and a renewed sense of self-worth. She understood that the kindness she had received was not a sign of weakness or indebtedness, but a foundation upon which she could build a life of dignity and resilience. And so, as the desert winds whispered through the valley and the stars glimmered overhead, the Apache woman felt a profound sense of gratitude and empowerment. The rancher's unexpected actions had not only saved her life, but had also transformed her understanding of survival, courage, and human compassion. She realized that even in the harshest conditions, acts of kindness and integrity could create ripples that shaped the course of a life forever. The rancher, quietly observing her progress, felt a similar transformation. He had acted out of principle and compassion, yet he too had gained something invaluable: the recognition of resilience, courage, and dignity in another human being. Their journey together had reached a pivotal moment, one where trust, respect, and mutual understanding had replaced fear, desperation, and uncertainty. The unexpected kindness that had defined their encounter would continue to guide their actions and choices in the days to come, creating a foundation for growth, learning, and shared humanity that neither could have foreseen. The days grew warmer as the desert moved toward the height of summer, but the Apache woman no longer felt the constant dread that had plagued her during her long journey. The ranch had become a place of safety, learning, and unexpected friendship. She moved with strength and confidence now, her body renewed and her mind sharper than it had been for weeks. Each morning she rose with purpose, helping the rancher feed the animals, tend the garden, and repair fences. Though these tasks were hard work, they brought a sense of accomplishment that lifted her spirit. She began to feel a rhythm in life that had been absent since she fled her tribe, a rhythm of survival intertwined with hope and possibility. The rancher continued his guidance, teaching her not only practical skills, but also the subtleties of living with respect and awareness of the land. He showed her how to read the sky for signs of weather, how to find water sources in the desert, and how to move quietly without disturbing the animals. These lessons were more than practical. They were lessons in self-reliance, independence, and confidence. The woman absorbed everything, realizing that she had grown stronger not only physically but mentally and emotionally. She now trusted her own judgment and knew she could face challenges without fear or desperation. One morning, as they worked together to repair a section of corral, the woman paused and looked at the rancher. "I think I am ready," she said quietly, though with a firmness in her voice that surprised her even more. "Ready to go back to my people, to face what comes next." The rancher nodded, understanding that this moment would come. Though he had cared for her and guided her through recovery, he knew that true survival meant returning to life beyond the ranch. "You have all you need to face what lies ahead," he replied. "Strength, skill, and courage. And remember, your dignity and wisdom are yours alone. They cannot be taken from you." The woman felt a surge of gratitude. She had not only survived, but had also regained a sense of purpose and independence. Her time at the ranch had transformed her. She reflected on the moments when she had been at her weakest, the times when she had felt ready to give up, and the day she had offered her body in desperation. Each memory was now reframed in the light of the rancher's unexpected kindness. She understood that survival was never merely a matter of endurance, but also a matter of trust, respect, and human compassion. As the day went on, she packed a small bundle of supplies, choosing the essentials she would need for the journey back to her people. She included water, dried food, and a few personal items she had kept since leaving her tribe. The rancher watched quietly, offering advice on the safest routes, the locations of water sources, and ways to remain alert in the desert. She listened intently, absorbing every word, knowing that his guidance could mean the difference between safe passage and unnecessary hardship. Before leaving, the woman knelt briefly in front of the rancher, her eyes filled with emotion. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. "For everything, for saving me, for teaching me, and for respecting me." The rancher met her gaze, his expression calm but deeply felt. "You did the hard part yourself," he replied. "I only gave you the chance. You found the strength within yourself. Never forget that." His words reinforced the sense of agency she had cultivated over the past weeks, reminding her that while help could guide and support, the true power to survive always lay within her. As she stepped out into the desert, the warmth of the sun on her back, the woman felt a mixture of anticipation, fear, and confidence. The desert still held dangers, but she now moved with the knowledge, skill, and courage to face them. She recalled the lessons she had learned at the ranch, the patience, observation, and quiet resilience required to navigate both the land and life itself. With each step, she felt her strength return, her body and mind attuned to the challenges ahead. The journey that had once seemed endless and hopeless now carried promise, grounded in the experience of survival and growth. The rancher watched her go, standing on the porch as she disappeared over the horizon. Though he would not see her again for some time, he felt a quiet satisfaction. He had acted out of principle and compassion, and in doing so had helped shape a life for the better. The encounter had transformed him as well. He realized that acts of kindness, even small or unexpected, had the power to create lasting impact. The bond they had formed was not dependent on proximity or circumstance, but on mutual respect, trust, and the recognition of strength and dignity in each other. The woman's journey back to her people was challenging, as she anticipated. The desert was as unforgiving as ever, with harsh sunlight, rocky terrain, and limited water sources. Yet her fear no longer controlled her. She moved with awareness, utilizing the skills the rancher had taught her, finding hidden springs, avoiding dangerous terrain, and moving with the patience and observation that had become second nature. Each successful step reinforced her confidence, transforming what had once been a terrifying landscape into a navigable path she could master with knowledge and foresight. During her travels, she reflected on the lessons learned at the ranch. She understood that human connection, even fleeting, could transform lives. She thought of the rancher's refusal to accept her desperate offer, recognizing it as an act of profound humanity. The experience reshaped her understanding of trust, kindness, and integrity. She realized that while desperation could drive people to extremes, compassion and respect could restore dignity, provide guidance, and open new possibilities. These insights became part of her survival strategy, a mental framework that gave her strength beyond physical endurance. Days passed, and the woman gradually neared the outskirts of her tribe's territory. Her heart quickened at the thought of reuniting with her people, of seeing familiar faces after weeks of fear, hunger, and uncertainty. She had imagined this moment countless times during her journey, but now, with strength and dignity restored, it felt real, attainable, and meaningful. She carried with her not only provisions and survival skills, but also the confidence and resilience that had been nurtured during her time at the ranch. She had grown beyond the vulnerability that had once defined her, and she approached her tribe with a sense of purpose and assurance. Upon reaching her people, the woman was met with a mixture of surprise, relief, and joy. Friends and family who had feared the worst embraced her, astonished by her resilience and the care she had received. She recounted her journey, the hardships she endured, and the lessons learned from the encounter with the rancher. Her story was met with respect and admiration, not just for her survival, but for the dignity and courage she had maintained throughout her ordeal. The tribe recognized her growth, understanding that she had returned not as a victim, but as a capable and empowered individual. The woman also shared the principles she had learned: the importance of trust, the value of compassion, and the power of human connection even in the most unlikely circumstances. Her people listened intently, appreciating not only the survival skills she had acquired, but also the wisdom she carried. The lessons were clear. Resilience, courage, and dignity could flourish when fear was met with kindness, and survival could be achieved with both strength and integrity. Back at the ranch, life continued much as before. The rancher tended to his land, aware that the desert would always challenge those who lived within it. Yet he carried the quiet satisfaction of knowing he had made a meaningful difference in someone's life. The woman's success and growth were a testament to the power of unexpected kindness, and he knew that the lessons she carried would endure long after she had left. In his own life, he too had been changed, reminded that compassion, patience, and respect could shape not only the survival but the character of another human being. As weeks turned to months, the Apache woman thrived among her people. She shared her knowledge, taught survival skills, and became a source of inspiration for others who had faced adversity. Her journey through the desert, her encounter with the rancher, and her eventual return had transformed her into a figure of resilience and hope. She understood that life would always hold challenges, but she now possessed the strength, wisdom, and dignity to face them with courage. The rancher, meanwhile, continued his life on the homestead, but the memory of the woman's presence remained vivid. He remembered the first night she had appeared, weak and desperate, the moments of fear and uncertainty, and the growth and strength that followed. The experience had reinforced his belief in the importance of kindness, integrity, and respect for others. Though he rarely shared the story in detail, it became a quiet lesson he carried in his heart, a reminder that even in the harshest landscapes, human compassion could create profound change. In the end, the Apache woman and the rancher had both been transformed by their encounter. She had regained her life, dignity, and confidence, while he had witnessed firsthand the power of patience, guidance, and respect. Their story became a testament to the idea that survival is not merely a matter of enduring hardship, but of embracing humanity, trust, and the unexpected ways people can help one another. In the desert, where life and death often balanced on a razor's edge, they had discovered a rare truth: that kindness, when offered without expectation, could change the course of a life forever. As the sun set over the horizon, casting the desert in hues of gold and amber, the Apache woman walked with strength and purpose among her people, her heart full of hope and gratitude. And miles away, the rancher watched the fading light, quietly content that his choice to act with integrity had left a lasting mark on the world. The desert remained harsh, as it always had, but within it, a story of survival, dignity, and unexpected kindness had unfolded, one that neither of them would ever forget.